Greetings. We, three members of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom U.S. Disarm Committee, are delighted to be part of this live stream. When we realized that the world was approaching the 75th anniversary of the dropping of bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we decided to focus on that year of turmoil, 1945, at the end of the most devastating war in history, because it gave birth to another initiative, the United Nations. As a result, we developed this timeline of 25 significant dates in 1945. We wondered, how could the US government support both the formation of the UN and the use of nuclear bombs against civilians? We wanted to look at how decisions were made during that year, decisions that continue to impact us. In April, the United Nations started its 2-month founding conference in San Francisco. Our Women's International League was there and had a highly critical position on the proposed charter. My Aunt Georgia Lloyd was there too. Look at our entry for her for April 15th. Finally, I'd like you to take a look at June 28th to hear a recorded webinar discussion on the 75th anniversary of the signing of the UN Charter. A speaker describes the role Eleanor Roosevelt played as a feminist activist during that traumatic year when her husband died suddenly and the bombs were dropped. Later, we know she was a primary mover behind the Universal Declaration on Human Rights.
Hello, I'm the co-author of a book on Nelson Rockefeller entitled Thy Will Be Done. I discovered that Nelson, heir to a gigantic oil fortune, played a major role in shaping the UN. His father donated the land on which the UN sits. And Nelson, working for the State Department, strove to turn the UN into an instrument of power for the US and its allies, one which would dominate the post-war world. In February, while Roosevelt was meeting with Stalin and Churchill at Yalta on post-war cooperation, Rockefeller was in Mexico, creating a military alliance among key Latin American leaders. By April, Nelson had turned his Latin American allies into a voting bloc that would influence the Charter of the United Nations, including the controversial Article 51. By June, the U.S. delegation had bugged the rooms of delegates to set the agenda of the UN and to pressure nations to agree to its positions so that the UN Charter would reflect a U.S. blueprint. By July, Reinhard Gehlen, the head of Nazi intelligence, was providing Rockefeller ally Allen Dulles intelligence on the Soviet Union. This collaboration morphed into the Cold War. Seen from this perspective, the dropping of the atomic bombs a month later was not an aberration, but instead a logical continuum in a drive for enhanced power through military strength, while sending a strong message to the Soviet Union.
I'm Cherrill Spencer, an experimental physicist. I focus my timeline research on the Manhattan Project and its role in World War II. These women, unknowingly, were adjusting huge electromagnets that were separating uranium-235 from its more common sister element, uranium-238. That uranium-235 was used in the A-bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. Those women were working for the highly secret Manhattan Project, which was started in early 1942 because the US government, wrongly it turned out, thought that Nazi Germany was developing its own atomic bomb. After Germany surrendered on the 8th of May and the war against Japan continued, the Truman administration swiftly decided to make 2 Japanese cities the targets of 2 atomic bombs. Our timeline describes some historians' views that the war could have been brought to a quick end without using those 2 horrendous bombs. Our timeline tells the concurrent but separate stories of the beginning of the peace-seeking United Nations and the worldwide warmongers. These 2 stories meet in the very first UN resolution, which included this statement: for the elimination from national armaments of atomic weapons. But sadly, 75 years later, that promising start has not yet played out. Please visit our timeline to read what you can do about a peaceful world.